And welcome to another edition of Bulldogs Unleashed, brought to you by Reclaim the Game. Our special guests this week are, once again, Luke Goodwin, but he's staying for the duration today because there is a really interesting link between Luke and our other special guest, who we are pleased to say we've brought in for the first time. He's a very busy bloke, but we've got him in. Peter Tunks, good to have you on board, Tunksy.
Yeah, good to be here.
We're going to have a lot of fun because obviously Tunksy's career is a huge chunk of success at the Bulldogs. A lot to get through on that. But let's deal with current events firstly. And Luke, Toby Sexton, Braden Burns and now Josh Addo-Carr. Well, we know Josh was out because of his hamstring in State of Origin, but unfortunately it seems like he'll be out for a lot longer than we thought. Those three guys join the casualty list.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, it was a bit unfortunate. With the Fox, we thought he would have pulled up okay. He's done it before. It's a bit of a minor strain. But, yeah, he looks at, 2 to 3 weeks. He is training, but, yeah, obviously not stretching out. So, yeah, we will miss him. Burnsy, yeah, he's got, he's a bit of a sore knee, but he's hurt his bit of his abdominal pain and got a bit of a knock on there. So, I think it's a bit wait and see for him. So, I'll be surprised. I don't envisage that to be, long term at all. Maybe week, 2 weeks.
Okay.
We'll see how he just reacts to his rehab.
And Toby's HIA, so assuming he'll be...
Yeah, he's got the 11.
He'll be okay.
Yeah, he's okay, mate. He's back training. He's a light training, but he's got the 11-day stand-down rule.
Now, Tunksy, I have to ask you because Tunksy's regular job, of course, is on 2SM, talking sport in the afternoons. And... mate, you must have been intrigued by the appearance of Toby Sexton just turning up midweek and then creating such an impression in the following game. It's typical of the Bulldogs' year that 1 week later he's injured, but it must have been interesting. You don't see that every day.
No, it's usually when in Australia, it's a big thing in the off season when someone decides to go somewhere for 2 or 3 years. But when I was over in England for a long time, there was. You can swap players.
You can loan them out, can't you?
You can do anything you want. Know, if somebody's having problems and you want him, you can just get him next week. And, it's a very different system over there.
Well, it worked pretty well for the Bulldogs. And I think long term, when you think about it, for 1.5 games, Toby Sexton made the Bulldogs look entirely different because it was around half time that he left the field against Brisbane, and then the second half wasn't too good. The side didn't adjust very well. So Toby clearly, you would imagine, with more runs with the team, is going to make this team look very interesting in the closing weeks. Yeah.
What impresses me much about Toby, and I've only had the privilege of working with him the last couple of weeks, he's a rugby league person. He watches every game. He studies every player. He talks it, lives and breathes it. It reminds me... I'm not saying him in his class, but when I was growing up as a kid, I had every footy card. I knew every football I was player. I went to every training session. I slept with football, and he reminds me of that type of kid, which I thought they were lost to the game. So I'm stoked that we have a kid, in our system that's like that because it rubs off on all the rest of the players. And it's interesting that he couldn't get past Tanner Boyd on the Gold Coast, but he just happened to be the kind of player the Bulldogs needed in a league where. I'm not the only one saying it. Everyone's saying it, including Gus. Top halfbacks are very thin on the ground at the moment. They're not easy to find.
Yeah, that's a big comment because it's not just halfbacks; it's hookers. And there's I've had a lot to do. I had a lot to do with the Fijians for a period of time, and I've been over there, and the Islanders. If the Islanders weren't playing the game now, I don't believe we'd have a game. They're terrific, but they're very, very different to the way that we're built, and it's a great thing. But the last couple of years for me, the hookers, the halfbacks are in such demand. You can be a promising kid on the way through. You mightn't be a champion, but if you're coming through and you look like you got a bit of potential, everyone will start fighting over you.
It's that spine, isn't it? It's the 1, 7 and 9. They're your key spots.
And look, other footy codes and indeed other sports are also now scouting players younger and younger. So you don't necessarily get to keep an athletic but also ball handling skillful player to yourself anymore. But on the other point is we're still mulling over the whole weight for age thing, aren't we? That is, should they have weight divisions for young players? And look, it's not just because of the cultural or racial mix of the game. It's also just from the sheer fact that in a contact sport like rugby league, as safe as we're trying to make it, it makes sense.
Yeah, I remember Dad telling me about, I played in the 6-stone sevens and stuff. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? But yeah, so I do know a little bit about that. Not a great deal, but just obviously what my father told me. But it's different. Yeah, I get as a bit of a duty of care. We want these young kids to play rugby league and feel a bit safer. So if they're playing against their own people of their own weight, they don't feel as intimidated and I'll say it's scared. I know I was scared coming up against bigger players when I was a kid. So, I understand where they're coming from a bit, yeah.
Well, when I played my first game in 1977 for South Sydney, I came off the bench a couple of weeks. Jack Gibson was our coach. And I used to love being, playing under 23s. And you went to reserve grade, and then you'd be on the bench for first grade. But as it was good because you're a kid, but you never thought you were going on.
Never.
You had the best seat in the house, So you had a good time and everything. And Jack called me over and he started talking all that mumble jumbo and everything. I said, Jack, what are you doing? I'm watching the game. And he said, 5 minutes, you're going on and replacing such and such. I just went back and sat down, and the blokes, they said, are you in trouble? I said, am I what? I've got to go on. But, I'm going on against Craig Young, 77, St George won the premiership, and he's playing for Australia. He's the captain or whatever. I'm going, what's
he was a machine.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny, Tunksy, now, we had one of them, which is so rare in today's game. So we had Jarrell Skelton, was 18th man, got activated, and he made his debut. So I actually took him into the sheds. He had a normal jersey on, but we had already got a jersey engraved for him with his number and the date. So we went in the sheds, we took it off, put the new one on, put his new shorts with his player number on there, and he went out and debuted. So, unfortunately, we couldn't get his parents down, or we didn't get him down because the chance of the 18th person then playing.
We did it 2 weeks in a row, I think.
Yeah.
We've had to activate the 18th.
Yeah,
man.
true. Yeah.
It's well, that brings us to. And I know it's not specific to this club at the moment because the injuries have been such a broad spectrum. I mean, you name it. But injury prevention, I mean, it's something a lot of footy clubs have had to deal with over different times, particularly if they have recurring injuries. It might be the hardness of the pitch they train on, all these things. I know that was the case for an AFL club at one stage. But are there things you do? How conscious are the coaching staff? And you've run clubs as well as coached.
Injury prevention... That was never mentioned the 6 years I was here.
I'm sure it wasn't. But
we tried to kill lots of people.
Self-preservation is probably a better way of putting it, Tunksy.
Yeah. We came here and there was a lot of guys that had come that year in '84, and Warren Ryan was the new coach, and Warren's a magnificent coach. His ability to get the best out of the players, was terrific, but. It was a crazy competition back then. You see, you played State of Origin, and they'd come in, and they'd check your boots and check your everything, and on the way out they'd just say, first 5 minutes, nobody gets sent off. Oh, what did they mean by that?
Wow.
That was a good one.
But I think, Billy,
imagine that.
It was good fun, though.
We talk about that injury prevention. The game's evolved. Like even when Peter played, then my era even, and then till now, the stuff they do now, like we wouldn't even comprehend doing back in the day.
Yeah.
So it's all about evolving, and the game, it's.
But that's what it has to do. It has to move with the times, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it does, and they have. So when you talk about that, let's look at our injuries. We've had a pec. We've had the knee. We had a guy had back surgery in the off season. So they've been different. If everyone's pulling hamstrings, you're thinking, okay, what are we doing here? Okay, but there have been, all isolated injuries. So, but obviously, that's something we'll review during the off season and think, okay, what can we do better? How can we improve? And we'll do that as a group, like every club does.
How is Ryan Sutton, by the way? That was a neck injury.
Yeah. No, he's fine. He's a day-by-day training, so he could be a chance this week.
Right.
Like I said, just see how he reacts to his rehab and recovery. He's slowly doing some training. But, yeah, it is still a bit tender.
That's the other thing I would hope, that the attempts by the league of getting the wrestle out of the game, or at least some of it, would alleviate some of the weirder injuries. I'm not linking that to Ryan, by the way.
No, his wasn't, no.
But it was just one of those things. But just on the subject of weird and wonderful injuries, the chicken wing was not something even you would have envisaged back in the 80s, mate, I'm sure.
Oh, there was probably other names for it.
No, that was around the time KFC had come in, and that was the chicken wings we had back then.
Why don't we bring it back? We can sponsor
Mate,
that.
they make up
money
names now for anything.
Just quickly on the Penrith game, Darren Andrews, our stats guy, has said that the average score from the last 5 games against Penrith has been 32-7 against us. It's Penrith's longest winning streak against the Bulldogs, and I suppose it'd be unfair to demand too much of the players this coming weekend. But after a game like last weekend where they had to reorganise, as I said, Toby going off, what do you do to get their heads back in place? Because not a great second half, obviously, on the weekend.
Yeah, those stats, that just shows you where both clubs are at the moment. They're at the top of their game, the top of their peak, which Gus put in place, and now he's come over here to start. So
clubs are chasing Jack Cogger now because he's been given that little window, and he's shown what he can do.
So we look at where Penrith were in 2019 when they sort of hit, let's say, their rock bottom, and we compare it to where we've been the last couple of years, and very similar. Very similar. So, we trust in what Gus has been in the place, and obviously Cam and the staff have been outstanding. And I do feel sorry for them because, as you know, Tunksy behind the scenes, we know what they do and the work they put in place. And at the moment, it's not happening for a number of reasons. But, rest assured, things have changed.
Well, this might sound sort of defeatist, but is it fair to say that given the injuries, given the development that needs to take place, is it asking the fans to say, look, don't worry too much about the results from here on in. It's of course you don't want the wooden spoon. That's a big deal. But also it's about looking for those things on the field that the club is obviously trying to recognise to build for next year.
Well, when I was over in England, there's different ways you can look at any situation you end up in. But the one thing is, you get an injury. Well, that gives an opportunity to somebody that you don't know whether they're good enough to play first grade and hold that spot. So that's what you've got to do. You've got to stay positive all the time, and you've got to give these kids an opportunity, and that's where your recruitment guys are very, very important.
Yep.
And if you're confident that they're doing the right thing, they're going to bring good kids to the club coming through the system.
Yep.
You can go back a whole lot of time. Like everybody basically that I know, we got our chance when someone got injured.
It's the only way we got a chance.
Exactly. And the thing is, that's, the recruitment. I don't know what the recruitment system is here at the moment, but the thing is, if you've got good guys and you've got confidence in them, it's very sad, but in this era, injuries are a lot worse than ever before. So you might lose a bloke for 6 or 8 weeks, but you've got to have somebody that can come in and handle this level.
Yeah. Well, Opes used to say to me, Chris Anderson, this is after I played and I got into a bit of coaching, and I used to rely on him as a bit of a mentor. And he always used to say, it's not how you get your chance, it's what you do with the chance.
Exactly.
And it was really resonated with me as a coach.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that as a player. But answer your question, it was a combination of a lot of things. There's been injuries, that we've had, like Tunks said, we've had young players being shot in there that probably are 1, even some are 2 years off, being given that chance.
What choice do you have? Yeah.
Well, we didn't have any.
That's right.
That's why they were done. But you see where they're at, and it's not writing them off.
No, that's right. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
It's like horse racing, some horses are good at 2-year-old, some at 3 or 4 or 5.
Midweek, weekend races, different,
Peter Tunks and Luke Goodwin, Unleashed. We'll be back with more after this.
Betting takes you away from the action. It can distract you from footy's most exciting moments. Don't let a bet take you away from the match. Reclaim the game. Be gamble aware.
This week's headlines.
Welcome back to Bulldogs Unleashed, brought to you by Reclaim the Game. The headlines, well, we're going to start with a rather obscure one. Did you know that a former Bulldog player, premiership winner as a matter of fact, is actually now a TV star and in line to win a Logie? I'll give you 5 seconds to guess the right answer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was a quick 5 seconds because otherwise it sounds pretty boring, doesn't it? We're talking about Dennis Scott.
Yep.
This week, we heard that Dennis was nominated for a Logie. He went on to be a landscaper after leaving the world of rugby league, and he became part of Selling Houses Australia, which is a very big streaming show, reality show, where they go around and do up places and sell them. I was not aware, I have to confess. I'd not seen the show. I'd heard about the show. I knew it was popular. Didn't know Dennis was on it. Apologies, mate, but extraordinary.
Yeah, well, mate, I knew on two fronts. I'm in the process of building a house. So I actually watched the show, and I've watched it for the last couple of years, and Dennis has been they've changed the people on the show, and he's one of the new characters on the show doing all the landscaping. And obviously being doing our ambassadors here at the Bulldogs, I get to know what most of the boys are doing. And I knew he was doing that. So he's had some shoots around here, and he comes in on the days off and, come and see the boys and stuff. So
we are going to try and get him on the show at some stage, but it may not be before the Logies. So make sure you vote for Dennis. It's a public voting thing. Once upon a time, I might have been asking you to vote for me, but those days are gone.
Sports tonight.
Those days are gone. Now, please vote for Dennis. Get onto the Logies website, which is pretty easy to do. Just Google Logies voting and you'll get onto it. But isn't that amazing? It just goes to show. I mean, this bloke here has had a very, very interesting career post rugby league, which we'll talk about shortly. But anyway, let's wish Dennis all the best.
Yeah, man, I'm proud of him. And in my space, in the wellbeing and education space, he started this landscaping apprenticeship, and his studies while he was playing. And we know now if you're engaged off the field while you're playing, you stay at it's been proven. They did a 3-year study on it. You stay in the game longer. You stayed one club longer. Better results on the field, and your transition out of the game's better. And he's living proof of that.
Yeah, good on him. Good luck, Dennis, with the Logies. And as I said, obviously he's out landscaping a lot, so and he's not based in New South Wales, so we'll get him into Belmore as soon as we can for this show. Now, Tunksy, we are going to talk about Tunksy's career in the Shed segment, but I want to talk to you about State of Origin at the moment, because it's back in the headlines because Peter V'landys has said the scheduling will be reviewed at the end of the season. We've just gone through a period where we have the usual complaints from fans, particularly from the better performing clubs who lose more players to State of Origin. We talked about Penrith a little while ago, although goodness me, they're so deep. They still managed to win most of their games. But Tunksy, your thoughts? Can we make the system better? I honestly don't like it as it is, but I don't have an alternative that I think would work better at the moment. I just don't. I can't think of one.
It's the highest quality rugby league on the planet, and the one thing I do, I compare rugby league a lot to horse racing. You've got to be 100%. You might carry an injury. That's a big no.
Yeah.
The one thing is, you cannot play on Wednesday night and then play on Friday night or Saturday for your club, because you carry injuries all the time, and you get strapped up and you do this and you carry it for 8 weeks or till the end of the season. And what you've got to do is you've got to give these guys time off. You've got to either say, we'll have it on the weekend, we won't have the premiership, we'll just have the State of Origin on the weekend. It's not fair on the guys. And I think if you look at a lot of these guys from the good clubs that have been getting a lot of injuries this year, it's the workload, and like I said, it's the highest rugby league level in the world. Yeah. So, and you're going to wait 2 or 3 days to play a game for your club?
Well, physically, but also mentally, they need to come down. Yeah. I know, speaking to
That's
the Fox,
a good point.
Coming back here and having to get up in a couple of days, like it's. you saw, you said it's the toughest rugby league and fastest you'll ever watch.
Well,
so.
look, obviously your blokes are full time now and the bigger and stronger and everything. But it was hard back in our day. But the one thing is, it gets down to how many minor injuries you can carry towards the back end of the season.
Yeah, remember they tried it. I think it was COVID where they tried those 3 games at the end of the year, but then. It's a shorter international window then, and I think our international game needs a bit of help.
Yes, it does.
So I don't know. It's a funny one, Bill.
Wayne Bennett says 3 consecutive Wednesdays. Just get it done. How much club rugby league he expects to see in that period, I'm not sure. But what are your thoughts on that theory?
And 3 weeks off for the NRL?
I'm not sure.
It's not a bad idea.
I just read that. I think, obviously, knowing Wayne, he's given it a lot more thought than just that. But all I know is that he's saying 3 consecutive Wednesdays. So,
well, if you did that, the 3 consecutive Wednesdays, you're not going to tell me that all the guys in the rest of the competition are going to they get my knee better, get my ankle better, get my shoulder better. You have a couple of weeks off during the season. It would make, I think, a lot more.
It'd be
quality.
enormous. Yeah,
it would be a lot more quality for the NRL.
Well, he might well mean rest the club games because when you think about
not a bad idea.
The momentum from one state of origin game tends to move very quickly into the next.
Yeah.
So, in terms of holding the attention of the public, club football would be consumed, wouldn't it? Really, because you're moving pretty quickly from one game to another.
The highest level, you're trying to get to such a high level, but look at this year, the amount of long-term injuries every club has suffered. It takes away from the quality of the game. So maybe what we're talking about, maybe if they just played the 3 origins,
back to back,
and did something like that,
But
you give the other guys, you've got to let them refresh and get over their little injuries,
And there'd be 2 rounds in between, so to speak, 2 weekends in between those 3 matches, in which case you could put on your Pacifica games and possibly schedule your women's state of origin on the weekends. And so you could have a block of maybe 4 top draw games, under 19s as well, men and women. So there's a lot of merit to that if you think about giving the club matches a rest.
But I think everybody's got to realise. I think it's so unfair to make guys play Wednesday night, then you turn up Friday night, Saturday or Sunday, and you've got to play 80 minutes again. It's very difficult.
I don't know if the Samoan team would have a team. They were playing for New South Wales and Queensland.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. That's another road we don't want to go down. It gets very complicated. I don't even know what the criteria is at the moment because they keep changing it. But I must admit, I do think it's great giving the Tongans, the Samoans, the Fijians, all the Pacific Island nations, those players a chance to play for their countries of ancestry. It's fantastic. And hasn't it made international rugby league better?
Well, they've kept it alive, the Tongans and
I'm
Samoans.
not sure. I punched a Tongan bloke in the head one time when I was in England I was playing for Leeds.
I don't know where this
How
is
did that
going.
go for you?
And my knuckle never ever came back.
It didn't it?
Look at that. It's gone. I don't know where it is.
This is Bulldogs Unleashed, brought to you by Reclaim the Game. Peter Tunks and Luke Goodwin. We'll be back to go in the sheds.
Let's go in the sheds.
Welcome back to Bulldogs Unleashed, brought to you by Reclaim the Game. Luke Goodwin, Peter Tunks, and a lively discussion about all sorts of things. We're going in the sheds now, and we have spoken to Luke about this before. And Tunksy, this would be foreign to you in terms of your playing career because I don't think they had welfare managers back in the day somehow. Maybe Bullfrog sort of was, one of his many hats that he wore when he was running the Bulldog. He's not saying anything.
Let me think about that.
Can I tell you, that is true. The first when I signed him, one of the first thing he ever said to me, he said, "Luke, happy wife, happy life."
That was Bullfrog's great advice?
Yeah, into wellbeing space. So, and he was right, though.
What do they say to the women's players these days?
Yeah, true.
Anyway, let's talk about your role lately because since we last discussed what you do at the club with the players, and boy, you do run around. Yeah. You're kind of a paternal figure one minute, a brotherly figure the next, all those things. But, you know, in that time, we've had a team, which doesn't happen often to a Canterbury team, that was booed off at half-time in a game, that 66-0 loss. Now, we all know the context of that loss. We don't need to go into it. But in terms of how it affected the players, particularly the younger ones, Reid was obviously very disturbed by it at the end of the game. He said a couple of things in the news conference, which obviously that whole issue around booing is something I don't approve of it, but I can't. Whenever I bring it up in any form of media where I've been hosting a program, TV or radio, the fans get straight back to me and say, no, we reserve our right to do it when we want. Okay, I'll back away from that. It's not something I do, but the fact of the matter is Reid was really caught out there as to what to say. So how did the players deal with it, mate, and what was your role in that?
Yeah, firstly, I was sitting on the bench when it started to happen, and they were clapping for Newcastle. They were doing the Viking clap. I'd never, for my time playing at the club and now being back a part of the club, I'd never heard or seen that before. So it took me back a bit. It affected me because of the love I have for the club. It was a place I'd never seen before. So when I played here, we won minor premierships the years I was here, and we were, quite successful, a bit like Peter's era. It was spoken about. Probably not as a group, but we, I know I had individuals reaching out, and a lot of context of why they do this, and now the boys understood why, because we don't like winning. They don't go out there to lose. We always go and try and compete and win, and like I said, it just didn't happen that night. We've all been involved in those games, so I think with Reid's frustration, it didn't mean what it come across.
But I don't blame him for saying it.
Yeah,
I know how I would. Oh, I don't know how he feels, obviously, but I understand. I think I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So the way, and obviously that's why he put out a bit of a message later, because he just wanted to clarify. He's a local junior. He was a junior here, and he loves the club like the rest of us. I think with the boys, a bit more embarrassment. You don't go out there to lose. You want to compete. Things just didn't come off. It was. Funnily enough, not funnily enough, but we got in on the Monday. We had work, and then we actually went over to the bowling club and got together, had a chat, played a bit of pool, and it was like, okay,
bit like the old days.
Yeah, no, it was, and Terry come across and spoke about what that place meant to us. It's actually called the Doghouse.
Okay.
So we went over there, and it wasn't a drink. We just went over there. Yeah. We sat around. We had a chat, played a bit of pool. We hung out. They thought they were coming in here maybe to be flogged and be yelled at, but it was a nice step back. The coach read the room very well, like he does. It was a great afternoon. We got back into training, and we come up with the win against South. Although they probably didn't have a full strength team, we still got to score the tries and stop them.
Yep, and don't forget plenty of players on the bench for the Dogs too. So yep.
Yeah, so no, like I said, it was a tough, and I'm saying for everyone, and I mean the staff upstairs, the coaching staff, but the way they come through it, and we'll lucky enough to get the win the next week against the Rabbits.
Now, in the context of your playing career, how do you see that sort of thing, Tunks? Has it ever happened? I can't imagine it would have happened in the time you were at the club, because, as Luke said, tremendous amount of success.
Yeah, it was. But the one thing is, there are so many things that you never know about the game until you've actually played it. And when you're a successful team, like just before us, like Parramatta won 3 competitions in a row, and you have a look at their side, they were just superstars, And then I came here and we had to beat them to win the premiership. But it's an amazing game. But what it is, it's a team game. You might have a couple of good players, but the rest of the guys have got to bring their level up there. Yeah. And there's so much happens. Someone comes into a club and says, right, this is a 5-year plan where, we need to get up to there from down here. And, there's all the sorts of things, but you've got to have confidence in the people that are doing this for you, because, I got a very, very rude shock when I saw the score 66-0. And I just went, whoa, you're a little way from, making the 8 in the top 4 and being a realistic chance to win a premiership.
Yep.
And that's what you're here for. You don't want to, we got beaten in the grand final, we come 4th, we come 8th. You want to win. You want to come 1.
I got a question for you, Tunksy. Back in your era and stuff when, like you said, they went through that, especially bringing all these new players in. How did you guys come together? What are some of the things you did to come together as a team? Because we were very successful in that mid to late 80s.
Yeah. Well,
legal things.
The guys, when I came here, Canterbury had bought a few blokes, and like Terry Lamb and Peter Kelly and everything like that. So, I played against Kel playing for Newtown when I was at South, and there's all this, coming to a new club, and it's like going to a new school when you're a kid, you know, because you're looking around thinking, it's interesting.
Exciting,
you don't know how you're going to go.
Yeah.
You're hoping you got hopes, but you don't know whether you're going to fulfil them. And it was just a very, very good time for the Bulldogs that they'd bought the players that they needed to go to the next level. Terry Lamb was one of the best players I've ever played with. Yeah. Great man. You could have a blindfold on, you could make a break and you'd hear Terry say, there you go, score a try, It was just amazing. But, over time there was guys like Mick Potter, great fullback, came through the system.
Do those guys glue teams together, Tunksy? Is that what you're saying? That there are certain personalities that sort of glue the team?
Yeah, there is, and... all the people do is they see the 80 minutes of you on the weekend, but, you've got that week and only the guys know what's gone on or what they said or what they didn't say. Yeah. And we were very lucky that we had Warren Ryan because he's the best coach I'd ever had in my career. And he was such a great coach, but he was a great man and you could talk to him about anything, and he was a really, really superior guy. And that's why we appeared in, all those grand finals and won those grand finals. And then, Gus was playing and, Gus was always a good player when he was at Newtown and when he came here. And, Gus learned a lot from Warren. Yep. And so we stepped up in 88.
Very technical. It was the first, technical.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You got to learn off every one of these people that can teach you how to do something better.
Yep.
And look, all the players and coaches I've talked to over the years in a whole range of sports, it's interesting. You get those teams that they all say they just loved each other and they socialised together and they were a really tight unit. But then you hear other stories of teams that actually didn't like each other that much, but they had a professional understanding. And that's where I think you pointed to it, Tunksy, is that it just goes to show how hard it is to coach. Because, you can't always get the players you want. You can't always recruit the players to play the style of footy you want to play. So, therefore, you have to take what you've got and do the best with it. And that includes personalities too. And so it's not easy to get guys or girls for that matter these days who don't necessarily get on but can do so on a footy field if you coach them the right way.
I've seen players go to certain clubs and they buy them for the skill and ability they have. And then they try and fit him into their system, and you take their coach their skill out of them. It's like, well, what happened to that player? Yeah. So it frustrates me to see.
We'll talk in more detail about Tunksy's days in those early 80s. There's a lot of stories about the players he played with, and of course a bit more about Warren Ryan as well when we come back on Bulldogs Unleashed.
Let's talk about the dog days.
Welcome back to Bulldogs Unleashed with Peter Tunks and Luke Goodwin. I'm going to focus a little bit in this seg, and I'm sure Luke doesn't mind this at all, on the amazing career of Peter Tunks. And it is connected in a sense because he played against Luke's dad, and I think Luke would have been a young bloke firsthand out there at the games watching some of this stuff go on. And we will get on to how Luke evolved, yes.
I think I tried to get Ted to give me an autograph when I tackled him.
Really?
Well, I was
how keen was he?
I was playing in the front row, and like I said before, Jack Gibson was a good bloke, and he'd coached me in the New South Wales under-18s that year. Right. And he come and I like playing, but look, I didn't want to play first grade, for a while, and it was just funny. And Jack was a good coach, very different, but. I could never imagine that I would ever be out there playing against these guys,
It's funny. Gus tells a story. We went up on a road trip up to Tamworth. It's one of our feeder areas. And I was in the car when we were driving around on the last day. And I didn't realise he was a big St George fan. He goes, "Oh, your dad." He asked, he goes, "How's your dad?" I said, "He's good." He goes, "Oh, mate, I loved him." I said, "What?" He goes, "Mate, my whole family was St George fans."
I never knew that.
He goes, in 1977, he said, I played, I think it was the reserve grade captain for Penrith, and they got knocked out the week before in the semi. So they never made the grand final. He goes, the next week I was there at 6 o'clock in the morning, lining up at the SCG with my number 1 St George jersey on. Oh, I couldn't believe it.
I must say, though, Luke, as a bloke who grew up in the 60s and 70s too and playing footy in the backyard and with your mates and whatever, Lord Ted was one of those guys, even though he might have played for the team you didn't support. In fact, St George were pretty much on the nose in the late 70s for me because they beat us in the 79 grand final and all those things. But you still love Lord Ted. He was one of those guys everyone liked. I'm not just saying that because I'm here. But
I loved him too because, he was just brilliant and you never knew what he was going to do next. But it's funny what
those players are popular, aren't they?
Well, I went to Marcellin College and I was a better union player than I was a league player.
That's right, yeah.
But I grew up in the Housing Commission and I was saying, going to play for nothing? Kid, there's no way in the world I was going to do that. But like Bob Dwyer, he was our college coach. We were in the Mara's competition with league, but instead of going in with the AMCO stuff and all that, we went in the Waratah Shield at Marcellin.
Yeah, which is the union.
Bob was our coach. He was great. And the Wallabies. And
Randwick, the Wallabies, great coach, yeah.
And in year 12, Bob grabbed me and he just said, "Look, I want you to come down to Randwick." He said, "I'm going to put you in first grade." And I said,
the Galloping Greens.
Well, because I was playing with South Coogee. I was playing league and union at the same time back then. And, you're only a kid, and I said to Bob, "Bob, you don't have to lie to me. You're going to make me play Colts. You're not going to put me in first grade." He said, "Yes, I have." I said, you don't have to say it, but...
Mate, you would have been a Wallaby. You would have been a Wallaby for as long as you wanted to be because you would have been placed in the best rugby club in Australia at the time under the best coach.
And the Wallabies were.
It's interesting, isn't
it? Being a kid and having some of the coaches that I had, and Bob was amazing, and it was all great. But it all builds together where you end up finishing off, And,
you did all right in league, Tunksy. You did very well.
I missed it. But then again, like I said, when you grow up at the Housing Commission, you're not doing anything for nothing.
Tell us about coming to Belmore from Souths in 84, which was a pretty good timing.
Yeah, well, look, I did 7 years at Souths and I didn't want to leave, but me and Terry Parker didn't get on, which I won't talk about. And he told me, "Yeah, you got to go." And so Manly wanted me, so Canterbury and somebody else. And it was because I never had any plans to stop playing for South Sydney, and when you've got to leave a club, it's a very, very difficult thing, and what you do, like, if they're kicking me out for no reason, there was a big problem between me and Terry Parker.
Who was the CEO at the time, wasn't it?
Parker, yeah. So,
just for those who don't know the history.
Yeah. So there was problems with me and him. So anyway, he wanted me to go. So I had to sort of work out where I was going to go. So I thought, well, I'll go to Canterbury, and...
Geez, Bullfrog would have loved that, getting one over Ken Arthurson.
Well, they were good mates back then.
Yeah. But
before Super League.
There was about 3 or 4 clubs that wanted me, and I just play for one club, But like I said, it was very difficult to work it out. But in the end, I decided I'd come here.
And even through the dominant Parramatta years, that three in a row, the Bulldogs are still competitive. They weren't far off the pace.
Yep.
And I think under that sort of mini rebuild, because they weren't exactly a bad side and didn't need rebuilding, but
they were close, but
not quite there.
They weren't getting there. But you got to admit, Parramatta's one of the best teams of that era.
Oh, an amazing team.
You can see why they were winning back to back to back.
And how much how much Parramatta was in the discussions when you joined the club? Peter Kelly obviously was your main regular front row partner. Warren Ryan recruited in there as well. And first of all, before we talk about Kel, and Wok, how much was it about we need to forge a team to stop Parramatta because Gibbo had them, winning 3 in a row? Was that part of the conversation?
No, because who the best team in the competition is in the 3 years previous to this one, but there's a lot of other good sides. There was terrific players back then, and you couldn't relax any time because someone will come out and put 20 points past you before you knew it.
Yeah,
and so coming out here, it was good. They'd bought a number of players, and they all seemed to be gluing in well together. Like Cal and I had come from South and Newtown, and we played well together. And it's everyone does their best, but it's a gamble, and the gamble came off. Like Terry Lamb coming here, for someone to let Terry Lamb, those people
we let him go first.
They need to go and have some sort of medical thing to see how you could let that bloke leave your club. He was just a freak.
So you guys were the first to start that, be the tough Bulldogs pack. So if win, lose or draw, you knew you'd walk off after the game going, oh, geez, I feel sore. And that was how you started it then. And, we had the Brockenshaws and Jared McCracken's when I was here, the Dean Pays.
Yeah.
Then the next, the no forwards, you got Ogo, you got Mark O'Mealy, Price, So you guys were you're the founders, so to speak, of what we are about at this club.
The guys that you don't want to tackle,
Yep.
and you don't want to be tackled by, basically, which is every successful club's got to have them. But how come when Kel was on the show, mate, he reckons he carried you the whole time?
Kel, he was we were very different style props, but I was an open side prop, he was the blind side prop, but the one thing, we're very different way. But the one thing is, like, I used to keep telling Kel that he had his IQ on his back, and he said I'm better than 13, And,
he wouldn't know.
But then I'm sure sometimes he wore 11 too. I don't think he got a bit dirty.
You're lucky he had his focus on the other team and not you. What was it like at training? Did you have a post training in those days?
Yeah, I'd just say, Kel, I said, do you know that bloke from West? And he said, no. And I'd say, oh, you should have heard what he said about him. So he gets sent off the next weekend,
Wind him up.
It did happen once or twice.
About 15 times.
Playing under Warren Ryan, you've already touched on it, mate, but, we've had a lot of blokes come onto this show and say how much they learned from the great Wok.
Brilliant man. Lives
700
700 metres from where I live at Maroubra, and I went over and saw him a couple of weeks ago, and still a great man. And the beauty of it, because I was lucky, I had a lot of good coaches. I had some coaches that weren't that good, but Jack Gibson was a very, very different way that he coached, but it was quite successful. But Warren, for me, he was down on this level, and he just did everything for everybody and tried to improve everybody's game. And there was no bias, there was no nothing. Whoever, if a bloke who's playing for Australia is not playing as good and he's playing better, he'd pick him. And it taught not just me, but it taught a lot of us you could depend on him. And if you came in at half time and you're in trouble, he'd tell you how to get out of it.
Yeah.
And Mortimer and Lamb, from a forwards perspective, what was that like? You mentioned Terry before in terms of you'd have a blindfold on, you'd know he was there if you got half a break or got an offload. But what about those two as a combination?
It's very, very different, Turvey just did what he saw, where
instinctive, yeah.
Terry was just like, that's why he scored so many tries. I don't know how he did it. He just knew where to go and where to back up on the inside or the outside. I just can't believe how good he was, And Turvey was good, but they were completely different as a 7 and 6 combination.
Yeah.
Chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
Turvey'd be great. He was such a quick guy and would, love to come across and tackle a winger before he scored a try and everything like that. But it just shows you two completely different characters in the halves.
And it worked.
Won premierships,
We talk a lot about even the great halves need that platform from the forwards. It's one of the big cliches of the game because it's true. But from your perspective, what do you guys want to see from your 6 and 7? I don't think that's changed a lot basically over the years, but what did you want to see, apart from not giving too much cheek and you having to go in and back it up for them?
Well, I'd come out here and look, I lived at Maroubra, I'm at the beach, and these blokes are out here getting tattoos and stuff like that. So sometimes it's a bit hard to talk on the same level, But no, that was good, There's always a bit of banter when you come to train and everything, and we had lots of fun.
Yeah, I think you're looking direction for one half, and like you said about Turvey, playing a bit of eyes up, playing footy.
Yeah.
Because that's what we know, but under the structure that the coach wants.
Yep.
We were very, very lucky. It was very unfortunate. We had Michael Hagan. Michael Hagan was an unbelievably good player.
Yeah.
And the luck with him, we've got Mortimer, we've got Terry Lamb. But, Mike played a fair bit of first grade, and he
started halfback in 88.
He was very, very different with his style. But to have a look at the way that Mike played and Terry Lamb played, but brilliant players, and we were so lucky to have Michael because, if anything happened to Turvey, he'd play number 7, and Barr would play at 6. But
what a sub!
You got it. Just you have to have some of these guys that another club would like to pinch him off you and play first grade. But we were very, very lucky to have Michael.
He wouldn't have been here now, I don't think.
No, different system.
Taken up earlier,
for sure. Gus Gould, come on. I've been asking players to dig up some dirt on Gus all season. But seriously, he evolved out of the Warren Ryan periods in a way, didn't he? And just took us to I don't know, what do you call it? A different level, another level. It was a team that almost combined the two eras. It was the entertainers and the enforcers in one package in '88, I suppose.
Yeah, well, Gus had a lot of good coaches, and Gus was a very clever player. You get someone like Dave Gillespie, and you just take some life insurance out, and hopefully you wouldn't have to cash it in. But Gus was good, He knew how to sort of draw somebody in, open a hole, give a boat, bang. He was very, very good with the ball. And it was just that Gus had so many different players and coaches that he could have learnt off, and he did. And, he's a pretty clever guy.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, that's what you've got to do. You've got to learn. You've got to get somebody to show you another way to do something if you can't find a way to be successful.
Mate, he's my boss. You're not getting no dirt off me.
Nah, it's all right. It's just one of our running gags.
I can't believe now. He used to have red hair. Now it's white.
It's probably a lot of
not
coaching.
Not that I know much about hair.
Well, same here. I'm not going to get into that argument.
But you're right. What he's brought to this club, and mate, I'll be quite frank and honest. And I tell my family and I tell people that ask me the question, what's he like? I'd be very afraid if he wasn't here, knowing the plan that's in place and where we're headed.
One thing that Gus will do, if it doesn't work, he'll find something else to come in.
Yeah.
Which you have to do. You have to adapt, don't you? Because you can never always get what you want in professional sport.
It doesn't matter how a lot of clubs are unsuccessful, a lot of pressure on them. Not many clubs are successful for a long period of time, but you've got to get to that stage where when we had Warren Ryan with it, he could get those guys and he could get them up to that level. Well, Gus proved that he could do that as well. And that's why, you've got to cut him some slack and you've got to give him some time, because it's not as easy as it used to be to go out in the juniors and find some really good kids that are going to have a great career. It is so difficult now.
Well, Tunks, you know what he's like and the type of person he is. He's the only one that's like, it's coming. Like we're all sitting there going, you're a bit upset one day, we're getting beat, the big scores. He's like, I knew it was coming. Yeah. We're fine. Yeah. Like he just got that plan and he stuck to it. And honestly, I've learnt so much. Like he gave me my NRL debut back in 92, round 1, when I was at Penrith. So I've had a long relationship with him. But to be back now and working beside him, it's crazy. Rugby league's crazy. And I've learnt so much. I've only been back a little time, and just the way the way he looks at things. Like we'll watch the same piece of cut of footage of a game, and he sees X, Y, and Z, and I'm seeing only Z. Like, I just don't get it. But that's a lot of years of experience too.
That's the relevance of it. Yeah. Before we get back to coaching and management, which Tunksy did a bit of himself, just a couple of things I want to tick off. You scored a lot of tries for a prop, even in those days.
I didn't run very far.
Whose fault was that?
The idiots in the other jerseys. Not my fault, So no, well, it was, like my big brother's 6'7". He was a good union player, but I'm 6'3", and I used to play in the backs when I was younger. But I just knew, it was easy to get the dummy half sometimes. Just look over there. So when you're near the line, you go like that.
Burrow.
Yeah.
There's lots of tricks you can do and everything. But I used to like scoring a try and just telling them.
Standing over them.
3 premierships and a grand final in 6 years. Was there a favourite?
I think it was 84.
The
I'd
first
come
one.
here and look, I didn't know a great deal of the players that were here already, so I was coming here and everything, and and someone said something in the dressing room one day, and I said, "Look, don't worry about it. Just don't worry. I'll win the comp for you this year. I'll get to everything, And I didn't know anything about anything, so I didn't know what we were going to do, and so as the season was going on, we were going. And I'm going, shit.
We could be a chance.
Shouldn't have opened my mouth. What am I going to do? So when we got to the semis, we were training, and I just got up. I said, listen, fellas, I said, when I got up and shot my mouth off about nothing I know about, right, every man for himself. I'm not winning anything for anyone. We just do our best, I had to get out of that. But we beat Parramatta in 84, but we had a fun night then. But you have a lot of fun. It was great back time. It was part-time when I was playing.
Yeah. Same when I started.
And you meet some great blokes, and it's great. You have a good win down here at Belmore. We go back to the club, have a few beers, because I could only drink 3 middies, and I had to go because there was a drink driving thing. So,
you're a good boy, Tunksy.
And I'd go back to the eastern suburbs.
So, for me, 88, we've won 8 premierships, right? And you're, and this is, I look at you, one of our club legends. You were a grand final winning captain. Which is massive, mate. I know you've done everything in the game, City, Origin, New South Wales, Australia, Kangaroo Tours, when I used to wake up as a kid to watch you play. But to win a grand final and captain, mate, was that the pinnacle?
Very special. Yeah. It's just something that just you keep thinking of, and it makes you feel so happy that...
Well, we've had 8 premierships since 1935. It doesn't happen a lot.
Too often. No.
Yeah. So for you to do that, mate, I feel honoured to be in the room with you.
Yeah, it was great. And the thing with, I was usually captain when I was a school kid, and all that sort of thing. But then when I went to South, I was just worried about playing.
So did Gus give you the captaincy in 88? Yeah. So how did that conversation go? What was...
Well, Turvey was, everyone has a career.
Yeah.
And you get to the end. And Turvey, was... he was
big call to make.
He wasn't consistently playing as good as he used to.
Yeah.
But that's happened with, getting old.
Yeah.
But the one thing is, and they took it off Turvey and give it to me, So I kept
it's big for Gus, isn't it?
Turvey up the arse. I said, get out, And I'm mucking around. But
it's big for Gus in his first year of an NRL coach.
That's a big call.
And he makes the first big call he's got to make is appointing, letting a club legend go for what he's done to the game and appoint it to you. That's massive respect.
Yeah, but the one thing is you've got to understand everybody views things differently.
Yeah.
But obviously he must have seen something because, we were all playing and we're having a great time winning comps, and being up the top. And, Gus is a good judge. He knows how to coach. Yeah. So, he did that. But sometimes you have to, maybe with Turvey being a captain for such a long time here, you get a little bit they've heard everything you've got.
Yeah,
or something
that's
like
stale.
that.
Yeah, that's true.
You
That
know,
happens.
But it comes down to the coach. They've got to make a decision if they think that they could do something better, you know. And the thing with Gus, he was coming in, and
Like I said,
it
worked, Tunks. You won a GF.
It worked to win the grand final because
Amazing.
we'd won 84, 85. We got beat 4-2 in 86, and then we missed the semis in 87. So everybody, and a lot of the players are thinking, are we heading downhill, you know? And then changed the coach, and Gus came in, and we won the premiership that year. So it was
Actually beating the WOC.
well, yeah, you know, like that was funny, you know.
They're-
But like he did a great job to get Balmain to the grand final.
I was going to say their
Back to
big
back.
chance was the following year, and
89,
yeah, and they'll forever regret that. That was an epic grand final the following
But
year.
I think that Gus, with the first year that he won the premiership, I think that gave Gus a lot of confidence in himself,
Believe in himself.
which is a good thing. You
Yeah.
know, if you've done some things that are, you know, 50-50, or other people say, what are you doing? You know, everyone's going to criticise you at some stage. But I think that gave him the confidence that he knew what he was doing, and he was going to keep doing it, you know. And it's proved to be right.
I've mentioned earlier Tunksy being an administrator and a coach, so I just want to briefly deal with that period after you finished playing. You didn't finish your career at the Bulldogs as a player, but you did go to play in England, and then you became CEO or chief executive. You were a managing director and a coach. Tell us quickly about that period of your career in England.
I just because I refused to go on a kangaroo tour. I wouldn't. Well, 2 kangaroo tours. So you know, I had some arguments with people. And
Okay.
you know,
is it going to be undiplomatic to go there, or defamatory to go there, or do we just?
I'll probably
Okay.
end up in court. But,
Okay.
But the one thing is,
Another podcast.
What I did in '87, I agreed. I went over and played 6 months for Leeds, and I was captain Leeds for 6 months. You know, so when I finished, I just went over. I got glandular fever, so I had to retire at Penrith.
That's right. That was
And then I went over there and just wanted to play for 6 months for a bit of a
So in 87, you played for Leeds during the off-season.
yeah.
And then, so you never had a break and come straight back in 88 and played on.
Yeah.
Wow. Won a grand final.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So it was good fun. You know, Leeds is a really good club, and you know, to get the captaincy over there was
With
was
Hedrington still the owner back then?
nice. No, he came a little bit
Later,
after I
okay.
because actually I played for Sheffield. See, I played for Salford, I played for Sheffield, and Hetherington was the boss at Sheffield.
Yeah.
So and then I got offered a coaching job at Oldham, and that was good. And then I went to Wakefield Trinity as the CEO. I went to Hull as the managing director. I used to do some work with the rugby union over there, and of course there's a lot of things, as you know. You know, you're trying to, like, if your parents or your grandparents were born in England, you might be playing in Jamaica, or you might be playing in Russia or Australia, but you can come over and you can play for that country. You know, there was a lot of different rules have changed over the last 30, 40 years. But, I had a lot of... I only went for 6 months and I stayed 14 years, you know.
I was going to ask you if you really enjoyed being an administrator, but how did it suit you? You didn't mind it?
Well, it was good because when I coached Oldham, you don't know until you have to. Your head's on the block. So I'm good at identifying talent. See what happened when I went to Oldham. They told me lies about this, that, and the other. I've been there about 4 weeks, and the training was going on, and these trucks pulled up at the club outside the ground. And
Water sheddings?
And
The old ground, yeah.
water sheddings. And I said to the assistant coach, I said, look after it. I said, there's something going on here. And I went over out there. It was the Inland Revenue, and we owed £1.2 million to the Inland Revenue. So for a couple of days we had to sit down and we had to work out how much, like I think in 3 months I had to make a payment of £100,000 or £150,000, and I had to do that every 3 months. Otherwise they would have we were insolvent.
Yeah.
And what I had to do, which down the track, when I look back at it, I had to sell the first grade team. You know, we had some good blokes who were past their best and this, that and the other. And I had to sell these guys to get the £250,000 to pay the revenue.
Wow.
And I went out the park and you enjoy it, but you think, well, what if I get this wrong, you know? But I did it, and I signed a lot of good kids, only young. And then that first year I was at Oldham, we finished third. So we were in the second division.
Yeah.
So the first and the second both get promoted to the Premier League. So
You were third.
It was good because, you know, we weren't ready to do that, but I had a whole heap of 18 and 19-year-olds. And the next year I got all 3 grades up to the Premier League.
Yeah, wow.
But I still, the thing I wasn't happy with, even though I was getting these kids coming through, like Barry McDermott, the prop.
Yep.
And I went and saw him, and no one had signed Barry because he'd been playing in the park and there's an accident and he lost an eye.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And
Funny story about him. Yeah, so he lost an eye, couldn't see, but he was the first guy in the UK to get where they squirt the stuff in your eye and they put it in his wrong eye so it didn't worry him. Because he could see out of the other one.
But Barry I'd sold him for £140,000 to Wigan.
Right.
But then I've got to go and try and find somebody else as good as him. But like over the period of time, I would do the coach's job.
Yeah.
I would do the recruitment, you know, all
Managers,
different
kit
ages,
man.
you know, all that. But it was it's very good when you're in England because, you know, you do more than one job.
Yeah.
You know, and it's great experience. But I was at Oldham for 3 years and I paid off about £700,000. Wow. And got all 3. Well, they were going okay, you know. So, but it gave me a lot of confidence because you think you know a lot, but until you have to, you know, you have to deliver. And that was a good situation. There was a lot of things I was angry at, like because they never told me they owed £1.2 million, but
Till they come knocking.
yeah.
The world of administration, and we could go on and talk about that a lot longer. Indeed, we will talk again to Peter Tunks and Luke Goodwin at some future time because there's a lot of stories, as we always say, that have not yet been told. But we really appreciate your time today, Tunksy. Thanks, mate. And of course, you can catch Tunksy's musings and his thoughts and opinions on everything on Talking Sport on 2SM on weekday afternoons with Graham and Pappy and Gav. Luke, thanks again, mate.
Thanks, mate.
We'll do it again next week. And there's a lot more to come from Bulldogs Unleashed. But for now, goodbye.